All I want is for you to testify how bad his addiction was.
Okay, so we're currently in commercial, so I'm just gonna look for some rumors, rumblings, anything really. All right. Yeah, Pajot signed 6 years with the Islanders. The money, the dollar amount has not came out yet. I'm assuming it's going to be around 5 to 6 million, which might be a bit of an overpayment, but it's also a 6-year contract. They're not going to give out a 6-year contract for $3 million. They're not the fucking Pittsburgh Penguins with Tanev. Maybe it might be around 5 million. I'd say it would likely be around 5 million. Yeah, so there has been quite a bit of trades. Okay, so Goudreau is fine. Nothing. He's not getting traded. Nothing. He had to take a piss. That's why he came off the ice for practice. Yeah, today's been a pretty crazy day because the car crash with Buchnevich and Shizurkin or whatever. There hasn't been too many trades, but there's been a few decently big trades considering how early we are in the day. Usually, there's no big trades yet. Trocheck kind of came out of nowhere. He wasn't even talked about until really today. Apparently in Chicago, there's a bunch of stuff going on behind the scenes. Sportsnet is back on, so I will play that again.
Pick in this year's draft, the conditional third-round pick in 2022. Pajot, 24 goals, 16 assists in 60 games this season. And the Sens did not stop there, also shipping Vladislav Nemesnikov to the Avs. That in exchange for a fourth-round draft pick in 2021. Nemesnikov, 25 points in 56 games.
That was the first trade of the day.
Rangers this season. Ottawa now has a whopping 14 picks in the upcoming draft. Just a few. Meanwhile, the number one player on our trade bait board is not going anywhere. Chris Kreider signed a 7-year contract extension worth $45.5 million with the Rangers. Patrick Marleau, well, he's got himself another new team. The Sharks trading him to Pittsburgh for a conditional third-round pick in 2021. Marleau, 10 goals, 10 assists in 58 games this season. The Florida Panthers trading Vincent Trocheck to the Carolina Hurricanes. That in exchange for Eric Holla, Lucas Wallmark, and 2 prospects. Trocheck has 36 points in 55 games this season, while Holla has recorded 12 goals, 10 assists in 41 games with Carolina. Now, despite being 6 points out of a playoff spot, the Sabres acquiring Wayne Ryan Simmons from the Devils in exchange for a conditional 5th-round pick in 2021. Simmons, 24 points in 61 games this season, and is an unrestricted free agent after this year. The Flyers, they've acquired forward Nate Thompson from Montreal. Going the other way is a 5th-round pick in 2021. 35-year-old Thompson recorded 14 points in 63 games this season with the Habs in Philadelphia. Also acquiring for Derek Brandt from Anaheim for a 4th-round pick. And lastly, the Maple Leafs reacquired defenseman Cali Rosen from the Avs. That in exchange for goaltender Michael Hutchinson.
Yeah, that was a weird
played 8
trade.
games with Colorado this year and split 2 years between the Leafs and Marlies from 2017 to 2019.
Because, like, the Leafs did not play him very
Around
much
after
before
the
they
show for
traded
Sports
him.
Center coming your way at 6 p.m. Eastern. We'll have a full trade deadline recap, reaction from all of your Canadian teams, and we'll also have a preview of tonight's game between the Iowa Senators and the Blue Jackets. James?
Thank you very much, Lindsay. We'll take one more break here and get you to our final hour to the deadline, not the final hour of the show. Remember, still 4 hours to go here on Trade Center, but only 1 hour for the general managers to make their final additions for the stretch.
Closed captioning.
Okay. So it sounds like a 1st-round pick is in discussion for Brady Shea, but they're just looking for cap space. Carolina Hurricanes. John Gabriel Pajot has $30 million total over his 6 years, which is not a terrible contract. Less than it could have been, but also more than it could have been because really, I have no clue what the range would have been for him, which is an annual average annual value of $5 million, which I'd say that's fair. Looking at the other contracts, it's pretty fair. All right. So, not much is really going on right now. So, if you want to throw down your opinions in the comments. I've already showed my face on camera. It wouldn't even be a face reveal. First 99 in NHL. 20 is Adam Henrique. Oh my god. I don't know if this is actually real, though. Hold on. What the hell? Okay, I think it actually is real. Okay. Tyler Ennis to the Edmonton Oilers.
Pick in 2021. There's a lot more other stuff going on. Bob McKenzie, start with the big news of the day to begin was what would happen with Jean-Gabriel Pageau. Moved to the Islanders, and he signs an extension with them.
Yeah, first-round pick, second-round pick, and a conditional third. And we thought it was a big price for a rental. Well, he's no longer a rental. He's now a full purchase. The New York Islanders have announced that they signed Jean-Gabriel Pageau to a 6-year contract extension. That would have an average annual value of $5 million. It includes a full no-trade clause for the first 2 years of that deal and a partial no-trade clause the rest of the way.
All right. Speaking of New York, the Rangers busy today. Signed Chris Kreider to an extension, but also making a move today with the Carolina Hurricanes.
Not at this point. They're in talks on Brady's Sky with the Carolina Hurricanes. There are cap issues for Carolina for Brady Shea. That is why the deal has not happened at this point. I thought you were going to ask me about Calgary because we believe Calgary is final.
Flames acquired Gustafsson from Chicago.
It's okay.
Finally, Chicago makes a move.
Chicago, not done yet. They have acquired Derek Forward from the LA Kings, trying to get Eric Gustafsson from the Chicago Blackhawks. Both teams trying to finalize that.
All right. Now, Frank Saravelli reported about an hour and a half ago, maybe one of the biggest.
The mother of them all.
Yeah, well, because we have all the guys on the trade beat board, the ones you expect. If you were ranking on the trade beat board, Zach Parise would have come in somewhere in the 500s. I mean,
So
Andrew Ladd would have been on.
Tyler Ennis went for a 5th-round pick, and then Garrett Forbert from LA to Calgary to be determined.
Yeah, that's in essence where it stands now. Now, what it speaks to is the complexity because of the finances involved here. From both players, Zach Parise has 5 years remaining and a cap hit of $7.5 million. You've got Andrew Ladd of the New York Islanders, soon to be the Minnesota Wild at 3 years, and a ton of signing bonus.
Okay, everything's going crazy.
So how that's going to break down? Are the Islanders going to take some of that money from Andrew Ladd's contract? What about Zach Parise and the Minnesota Wild? How much are the Wild going to have to retain? All of those details we're still trying to assemble, but when you get to a point where you're asking a veteran player like Zach
Okay, so
Parise,
I'm happy that we made a
that
trade, but
to waive their
Gustafsson was
no-trade,
actually a really
in
good
essence, you've got
defenseman,
a
and
deal,
I'm going to
but
miss
it's a
him on the team.
complex one.
Now, to be clear, you've got to think that the Islanders are the only team that Zach Parise would waive for. His dad, JP, played there at the 03 draft in Nashville. Zach said openly he hoped the Islanders would draft him. It turns out the Islanders took Robert Nilsson instead. New Jersey jumped up and drafted Parise. That was Lou Lamoriello. Parise really enjoyed playing in the New York area, liked playing for the Devils. So this would be full circle for him to go back to the franchise that really he grew up watching with his dad.
It's too bad our colleague Pierre McGuire couldn't be here today because if I remember
Don't bring that up. Don't bring it
at the
up.
draft, he might have got a little upset when the Islanders didn't pick Zach Parise.
Yes, a feud that goes on to this day, Empire Report. But there's lots. We have 56 minutes to go, and there's lots of irons in the fire. James.
All right, thank you, boys. For everyone who has been busy with their day, we understand that's a lot of you. Let's run through the timeline of what has happened so far on Trade Center. For us, it officially
Hurry up, we
starts
get to
after
the damn trade.
The first official trade for Trade Center was the Oilers getting Mike Green from Detroit. Kenny Holland busy with his old team on this day. Kyle Brodziak, a conditional 4th rounder, comes the other way. Nemestikov goes to Colorado. That's probably a result of Chris Kreider, who Colorado was reportedly interested in re-signing with the New York Rangers. So they get Nemestikov from Ottawa for a 2021 4th-round pick. The Senators just loading up on draft picks. Yes, Pageau goes to the Islanders, signs that extension, but the haul is significant for Ottawa. A 1st-rounder in 2020. If the Islanders miss the playoffs, the Sens will have 3 lottery picks. Now, that particular first rounder is top 3.
This is
for 10
actually a
pick,
kind of
but a
big day.
possibility if the Islanders don't make it that the Sens could have 3 lottery picks. They also get a second rounder and a conditional third round pick if the Islanders were to win the Stanley Cup. Vincent Trocheck, who we had on just a few minutes ago, goes from Carolina. Eric Holla, Lucas Walmart, a couple of prospects back the other way. A depth deal, Nate Thompson to the Flyers for a 5th round pick. Patrick Marleau leaves San Jose and makes a run with the team that was his favorite team growing up, the Pittsburgh Penguins, a conditional 3rd round pick going to the San Jose Sharks. Hutchison, the backup goalie who didn't work out with Toronto, going to Colorado. Callie Rosen comes back to the Leafs. Derek Grant to Philadelphia, another depth move for them. A 20th, 4th rounder, and Kyle Pasculo to Anaheim. Wayne Simmons, this one was interesting. Buffalo's trying to make the playoffs. They're in it. They've gone on a nice little run, and so they get Wayne Simmons for a 5th round pick from the New Jersey Devils. Nick Ritchie and Dutton Heinen switch places. Another minor deal between Ottawa and the Montreal Canadiens. And then Athanasiou and McDavid, 2 of the fastest players in the league, potentially playing with each other as he comes over from Detroit. Another move between the Oilers. Sam
Okay,
Gagner,
LA will get a
going
4th
away,
round pick from Calgary for
and now
forward.
Tyler Ennis, another move from the Ottawa Senators, going to the Oilers. So as Gord mentioned, Ennis, Athanasiou, and Green all in for the Oilers on this day, and the Ottawa Senators continue to absolutely load up on picks. Our trade bait list is something we've had since last year. Frank Sarvalli compiled a list of all the players who could be on the move. He's been updating it pretty much every week since November or so, and he'll update it every hour. Today, here's Frank.
James, it's been a good day for the trade bait board. There's 13 players that have been moved out of the top 50 so far, and we're looking at a very real possibility that out of the top 10, 9 out of those 10 players or 8 out of those 10 players will be off the board by the end of the day. Chris Kreider, of course, re-signing with the New York Rangers, and potentially it looks like teams will have to get really creative to pry Dustin Buffalo out of Winnipeg, given that he will not be playing this season. But look at Carolina's 1st round pick there in the 3 spot.
Eric Gustafson has been traded.
Eric Gustafson, it
It's
appears,
just
is
not
closing in
announced
on a
yet.
trade potentially to the Calgary Flames.
Like, it's
That is
not official.
done just yet. So another name to keep an eye on. But there's lots of names in play, James, and a really, like I said, really good chance that we
He
can have
is
most
gonna
of
be a
our
Calgary
top 10
Flame.
off the
It's
board by
just-
3 o'clock.
What are they getting back?
All right, and Dustin Bufflin at number 10. We spoke to Kevin Cheveldayoff earlier, the general manager of the Winnipeg Jets. There seemed to be more talk on Bufflin a couple of weeks ago than there is right now. But again, we wait to see the last hour until the deadline. Here's what the final hour usually looks like on trade deadline. The percentage on the right is the percentage of the deals on the day that happen in the final hour. And as you can see, it is the power hour. Last year, 61% of the deals, 14 of 23, the high back in 2016, when 14 of the 19 trades happened in that final hour. Now, I use the term final hour loosely because what happens, often you get a jam up at NHL headquarters at 3 o'clock. So if we haven't reported something at 3:03, doesn't mean it hasn't happened yet. We'll get trades at 3:15 Eastern, 3:30, up to 3:45 or so. So stay with us, and we'll have every deal for you sometime this afternoon. We continue to look a little deeper into the stories of the day. That's our Insight panel with Brian Hayes.
All right, thanks, James. So, yeah, under an hour officially, but like you just pointed out, more deals could come out beyond 3 p.m. Eastern time, but also more deals happen than just simply today. I mean, there's been a lot of deals made throughout the NHL leading up to trade deadline day. When we look at the 7 Canadian teams, the 7 GMs, is there one in particular for you guys that you thought, okay, that's pretty good work so far?
Ottawa is a heartbreak hockey town, and you can't afford too much sentimentality. Buying a jersey can be dangerous, and selling off Jean-Gabriel Pageau is kind of the end of that, probably, in terms of the guys that he's a hometown guy, a guy that the local market really loves. You get a 1st and a 2nd for him. The only way Ottawa's ever going to be a contender again is through the draft. They're not going to be a free agent player. This is how you do it. Pierre Dorion, between that, a 4th for Nemestikov, a 5th for Ennis. That's exactly what the Ottawa Senators should do. That's smart hockey.
For me, it's Kenny Holland because he's understood in Edmonton. This city has suffered enough. Yes, McDavid is there. Yes, Draisaitl is there. But they haven't done anything when it has mattered most. He looks at the window and saying, okay, it's open now. The West is open. So we're going to move people in. And he knew a couple from Detroit, Green and Athanasiou. Now Tyler Ennis. There's some options up front. A right shot, puck-moving defenseman. I really like what Ken Holland has done.
Is there anyone for you, Dave, that you're looking at with less than an hour to go where you're thinking, okay, It's time to move here. Like,
Well,
we've been waiting for it. When is it going to happen? Who is that GM for you?
Well, it's the guy whose team just got beat by the Zamboni driver. Obviously, there's a huge hankering to make something happen for Kyle Dubas. He watches his competitors in the East. I mean, the four most likely playoff opponents in Tampa, they had Blake Coleman. Washington, they had Kovalchuk and Brendan Dillon. Boston added Andre Kasha prior to the deadline. And Florida adds Halla and kind of mixes things up by getting rid of Trocheck. So what is Kyle Dubas going to do? All he's done in the lead up to the deadline is make an emergency replacement at backup goalie. And yay, he got something from Michael Hutchinson today and bringing back Callie Rosen. But that's not going to move the needle.
Well, one of the things that Bob McKenzie said earlier today was what the ask for Tyson Barrie was a first and a prospect.
Seems high.
But what does that tell you about how Kyle Dubas is looking at this team and looking at the future? Right? Like, you're not asking for someone who can help you down the stretch. You've already got defensive problems. Morgan Riley's out for a while. That doesn't tell you that you're trying to win right now, that you believe in this team right now.
And certainly doesn't believe in Tyson Barrie right now.
Well, and when you go back, the Nazem Kadri trade is so fascinating because it made sense on paper that you could get an Alex Kerfoot, a third-line center who gives you 70% of the production, and you get another defenseman. And how many nights we watched Leafs this year where you thought this could be a good
Eric
guy?
Gustafson
Isn't that a part of
for
the Tyson Barrie deal as well?
conditional
I mean, these
picks.
guys are humans. We think, they don't concern themselves with how media and fans are going to react. He's probably the Maple Leafs trying to salvage the Kadri deal because it doesn't look good today. It looks awful, quite frankly.
But structurally, on trade deadline day, how do you fix the Toronto Maple Leafs?
Yeah.
You don't do it today. And so whatever he does, barring something major, maybe it's Barrie, I don't see what Dubas can do.
What about Montreal? Where does Marc Bergevin go from here? Well, what is Montreal saying with under an hour to go?
Well, what Bergevin does is shop at Costco. He wins all the small deals, deal after deal. He's done great with these small deals. Kovalchuk has found money, moves Nate Thompson to Philly for a fifth. At some point, however, they have to win. 4 out of 5 years, assuming they don't make the playoffs this year. And people in Montreal are getting tired, and that shows up at the gate where only 18 of the 32 or 33 home games have sold out. That's noticeable.
Is that something that the GM would have to answer for? In Montreal, I mean, the Molson family, I'm sure they're paying attention to something like that, a detail
absolutely.
like that.
Jeff Molson's the president of the team, of course, but this is on Marc Bergevin.
One of the great things about Montreal, and as a Canadian hockey market, a crazy one, they will still vote with their feet when the team does not live up to expectations.
Right, Montreal.
How are they not breaking these trades yet?
No, they're not going to make it. They're close. Ottawa knows they're not going to make it. Montreal likely won't. The other 5, they all could get in at this point. James?
All right, thank you very much, gentlemen. Trade deadline day is a day where everybody is on edge and everybody's looking for a sign. Practice is watched more closely than any other day of the year. And a lot of Flames fans got a little bit anxious when Johnny Gaudreau left in the middle of their skate today. And when asked about it after, here's Johnny Gaudreau's answer why he left.
I didn't think it was going to be that big of a deal. I had to pee, talked to Warda. I didn't realize, Warda said there was only like 2 minutes left in practice. So he said it was good just to get off, and got off, and the phone was blowing up. So I don't think nothing to worry about.
It's a quote of the day so far. I had to pee.
Sometimes you do, you know.
Sometimes
things happen.
I just did moments ago. Remember Dennis Weidman? When he was with the Flames, pranked us, took a fake call, didn't he, at the bench?
Yeah,
And then went off.
Hartley was part of that, too.
And we, you know what? He deserved that. That's what we do on trades. Everything's okay. Johnny Gaudreau, ladder in.
Wrist alignment, Gosh Despair. Oh, there's big names. Boots Nevich.
Into the last hour.
There's some big names on here now.
The deadline. All sorts of analysis and more from the trade breakers as we take you there.
Unless I just didn't notice that the whole time. Somehow.
Well into night 2 of a record-breaking snow onslaught.
CTV Thursday.
Half a foot of snow has rendered every road in Seattle useless.
We need a gurney?
The blizzard.
My car is buried in snow.
It's buried?
Yes.
It just popped.
Oh, God.
Coming.
I need to go to the hospital. We can't.
Headed to Station 19 in Grace Manabee. The blizzard.
Okay.
Thursday, 8-9 Mountain.
So Calgary got 2 solid defensemen in Forbort, who's just a depth guy, and then Gustafson, who's pure offensive guy. He's pretty decent. But Calgary really needs some forward depth. Panthers are looking to add a defenseman before deadline ends. A team that's doing really well this deadline is the Edmonton Oilers. They are doing all they can do. They acquired a defenseman in Green. They got Ennis. They got Athanasiou. And I feel like I might be missing one that they got. Yeah, Gustafson went for conditional picks. Not too sure about those yet. Not too sure what they are.
In trade center stories in the Naked City where guys find out they've been traded. I think Ron Tugnet told us he was sitting on a toilet in his hotel room when he found out he'd been traded and heard it on TSN. Tessa Bonham was with a couple of guys who have their own tales.
Yes, as here before, Carlo is a guy that'd be watching Trade Center all over Twitter, similar to myself. You're a guy that was just like, nah, I'm going to go about my day, probably find out on the toilet. Turns out that wasn't the case. He was somewhere different. But we're within the final hour, so you guys can kind of recap us on maybe the best trade story you've heard or experienced.
Yeah, I mean, 3 o'clock is the deadline, but it's not really a deadline. And one of the great stories I have is one of my best friends, Brad Boyce, in 2007. He didn't jitters because he had already gotten traded on a deadline before. So he's in Boston and he goes home after practice and it's like 4 o'clock in the afternoon. He's like, let me see what trades are out there, what the day's recap. And he turns on the TV and it's like, Bob McKenzie's like, I got one more trade to announce. And it was Brad Boyce being traded to St. Louis. So that's a pretty cool story.
Bob, how dare you?
Way to go, Bob.
I know that feeling.
You told the story last week.
I know the feeling all too well, unfortunately. It's happened a couple times, but in this instance, I was getting my haircut in Philadelphia.
Surprise, surprise.
No, I don't sit in the barber chair all day long. I like deep tissue massages and pedis and ears. I like all that. And right up the street from my house, deadline passed, 3:30, have a comfortable walk, grab a coffee, go to get my haircut. And I think I just got to the chair and the phone, I could see it, and it's 416 number, Toronto area code, and I'm thinking, oh god, and sure enough, it's TSN. You've been traded. I'm like, to where? And I'm just now flush and I'm embarrassed, and you're going to Phoenix, and I'm like, all right, here we go. Turn this up and let me go.
Hopefully the haircut worked out well.
It did.
Nice. Awesome. Well, there's your stories for the day. I don't have one, unfortunately. I've never been traded, but if I did, I would be tuned in to you, James.
Yeah, it's wild in here sometimes. We're on the air till 6 o'clock Eastern time and a special edition of Sports Center at that time as well to recap everything that's happened here at the trade deadline is look at the cup contenders. And look, it's hard to identify, especially out west where it's a mess in the Pacific, but you could easily pick out 6 or 8 teams that look like they're above the rest right now. A couple of teams we want to look at first. Tampa and Boston, the 2 top teams, and it's not even close right now in the Atlantic Division. The Lightning and the Bruins. The Lightning, after a really slow start to this season, went on an unbelievable run, an 11-game winning streak, 23-4-1 since December 23rd, which is ludicrous in a salary cap NHL these days. And they go get Blake Coleman from New Jersey, who's a good player who also has term another year after this. And, of course, all of this happens with the back story of the 4-0 sweep, the most shocking upset in recent time in the playoffs to Columbus last year. What do we make of Tampa? I know none of this matters until the playoffs, until they get over that, but is this the number 1 cup contender? I believe you had him in your top 5.
I did have in my top 5, but it's a couple things. Blake Coleman is a little bit grittier, a little bit more sandpaper, good speed, but Zach Bogosian also gives him some more defensive depth. And I think both teams, you talk about Boston and Tampa, address specific needs. Andre Kasha he's a skilled player. But then I thought that Anders Bjork had passed Dan Heinen in Boston. So they moved Heinen and brought back more bulk in Nick Ritchie. So almost to say whatever type of playoff series we run into, each of those 2 teams, we're going to be prepared for it with a specific need that we've addressed today.
So when I look at Tampa, they started off poorly. I think there was a little bit of drag their feet from the end of last year. They got dumped in New York in October, right at the end of October. And from that time on, they felt they've played really well. Their focus is harder in front of their net and the opposition's net, less turnovers, a harder game. And I think they learned some of that. They also have the best goalie. I think Andre Vasilevsky's the best goalie in the league. Mm-hmm. And so in most series, they're going to have the best guy in goal. I think that for me, I have Tampa ahead of Boston because I think where Boston, I think, is like that, steady and like a rock, Tampa's got that to them. Tampa can take their game to another level that I don't know if other teams can.
And I think going after what happened in the playoffs last year, they realized that as much skill as they have, they can't rely on that completely. You see they brought in Pat Maroon, Coleman, and Bogosian. That's a different element for them because you see in the playoffs, you can have all the skill you want, but if you don't have some kind of physical element, you're going to struggle. And that was obviously evident last year against the Columbus Blue Jackets.
Yeah, and I have Tampa Bay, I think, to your points. Tampa Bay's dialed into the details, the important critical areas, because once Columbus poked a hole in their balloon, that air went out quickly, and they had no way to find a way to get themselves level ground. I have Tampa Bay as the best team right now. I think that they're for me, the front runners. But that second round of the playoffs, Boston and Tampa Bay, and Washington and Pittsburgh.
Are you already declaring that?
I am. I'm picking those 4 teams.
Did we not watch the playoffs last year, though?
Yeah, it happened once.
They learned.
I owe a bottle of Barolo to Mr. Gord Miller.
Because
he took the field, I bet Tampa Bay. That's how sure I was.
That is a Miller bet if I've ever heard it.
Oh, yeah. That's not great odds on your end, considering the history of Stanley Cup.
That is so
really stupid.
You know what I would say, too? As much fun as the upsets, and last year was mayhem, and we enjoy mayhem, but it kind of hurts the playoffs as they go along, don't you find? With no offense to Toronto and all those teams that want to get it, I'd like to see Washington and Pittsburgh and Tampa and Boston in those second rounds because it seems offensive to the teams that win those early rounds, but it just seems to hurt the playoffs later on when there's a ton of upsets in the first round. Am I on an island here, or are you guys with me?
No. Fair. Yeah. Like the early round is always the best round because there's games every night, multiple games every night, and there are these crazy upsets. And then it's like the tablecloth gets pulled off, except you didn't get the dishes down. They're all on the floor. And you're like, eh.
Let's look at the Boston. Go ahead.
I just want to say that, but I know exactly what you're saying. I feel the same way. Think about 1993 when the Penguins got knocked out of the playoffs. It just wrecked the playoffs.
The story I heard is the Montreal guys were all watching in their hotel, and when David Volek scored it overtime, they were so happy that we had knocked them out. We could beat those guys.
Let's look at the Boston Bruins, who've had a really, really steady season, a couple of dips, but not too many right now, and still maybe the best line in hockey. 2 10-plus game point streaks for the season. David Pastrnak, those guys were having the debate about the Hart. He probably won't win it but he deserves to get some mention. But again, when you're on a line with those two guys, sometimes you get canceled out in the voting that way, but still has a really good shot at the Rocket Richard, leading away right now with 45 goals.
45 seconds.
Catcher they get from Anaheim, a Richie from Anaheim today. Lost out to St. Louis in Game 7.
There is still some pretty good players on the trade bait board.
And also that 2-goal.
Michael Granlund, Ryan Donato, Freddie Shea, Ristolainen was there, Joss was there.
Vasilevsky's the best goalie in the league. That's
These guys are low, so they're less likely to get traded, but still.
I think they're
Josh Manson's pretty good.
It's a short list, though.
Elias Anderson's more in the future.
Those are two of the cup contenders. Again, as the day goes along, we'll look at some of the contenders in the West and some of the others right now. We'll get to Pittsburgh and Washington. Right now, we have Gordon Miller and the Breakers with a little more.
We have one here. The Pittsburgh Penguins. Jim Rutherford normally gets his business done a little sooner than this, but he's got a couple today. And the latest is Buffalo Sabres' Evan Rodriguez, who asked for a trade earlier this season, goes to
That's correct. Evan Rodriguez, we're checking to see if there's other pieces involved, maybe going both ways. So we'll try and finalize that. But we know that
Connor Sheary
and Connor Sheary will also be going to the Pittsburgh Penguins, back to the Pittsburgh Penguins. So Sheary and Rodriguez going to Pittsburgh from the Buffalo Sabres, who earlier today picked up Wayne Simmons from the New Jersey Devils. We'll see what the price is going from Pittsburgh back to Buffalo for those players.
And, of course, the Penguins earlier today acquired Patrick Marleau from the San Jose Sharks. So Marleau gets a chance to chase the cup that has long eluded him. We are still awaiting word.
Cahoon going to Buffalo. Did we mention that?
No.
That's part of this deal. So Rodriguez and Sheary for Dominic Cahoon.
Okay, so it's more of the pieces coming in place. We are waiting on the big news out of Minnesota and New York. Will the Zach Parise trade from the Wild to the Islanders happen in exchange for Andrew Ladd? From the financial considerations, we're still waiting on that one, James. And, of course, the clock is ticking. As you mentioned, the deadline is 3 o'clock. Any deal has to be filed by 3 o'clock with the league. The call can happen afterwards.
All right, thank you, gentlemen. So let's digest that one for a second. And we thought Calgary might be the wild card team. Buffalo's a bit of a wild card team.
I have no idea what's going on there. I don't.
Well, Connor Sheary back to Pittsburgh is interesting. That's where he had his success. Had 2 really good years there. With one where they won the Stanley Cup, and he was a Stanley Cup champion. Had 23 goals that season. Played a key role in the playoffs. Goes to the Buffalo Sabres. Decent year last year. 14 goals, 20 assists. Not so much this year. He's got 9 goals in 55 games. But
I feel that Sheary and Rodriguez for Cahoon is a pretty decent trade.
Until this recent
pretty
run,
even, I feel.
Into almost a playoff race here, a couple of wins away from being legitimately in the playoff race here. But what do you make of this deal?
Dominic Cahoon is the best player of those 3 right now.
Yes.
I think Cahoon's a good player. And so he's going back to Buffalo, whether somebody sees him as a fit, somewhere in their top 6.
But Pitt adds 3 forwards today. Mm-hmm. And so trying to get deeper. And
Sheary, they know, has played well with.
Stay down to 30 minutes, 30 seconds.
Well, the other thing, too, McCann's been playing left wing.
Right.
That gets McCann back in the middle of the ice as a third-line center. You had Marleau, you had Sheary. Now you get the alignment down the left side. Remember, we're still missing Gensel, and because of the surgery. So I think it gives them the ability to get McCann back in the middle of the ice. I think he's
I would like to see Kyle Palmieri go somewhere.
Marleau,
same with Brendan Saad.
McCann and Brandon.
I'm a Hawks fan. I do like Saad, but I would like to see him go somewhere.
Who's played really well for them. He drops into
I would like to get some
spot.
decent value back for him.
You push down, and that's deep.
And you could put Sheary with Bluger, and he's fast.
But really, with these top guys like Kyle Palmieri, you could wait until like the last few minutes, and then you could make teams pay for more, pay more for him.
Dominic Cahoon's an interesting guy who
they would need to add
years in Europe and then comes over
go to a team that hasn't done much, but what you would think would do much.
Did pretty well in Pittsburgh,
and say the Leafs, bring a defenseman like Troy Stetcher, bring a defenseman to the Leafs, and you can easily get more than what you would have gotten 2 weeks earlier.
I was a little politer.
Yeah, you usually are than me in this particular situation. All right, so another trade for the Buffalo Sabres and another trade for the Pittsburgh Penguins on this day. We'll take a break. We'll assess our
So
numbers.
Tyson
where we are
Berry
right
is
now.
not
We'll get
close
into
to
the final
getting
half hour
traded yet.
before the deadline here on Trade Center.
So I feel that he is not going to get traded. Alright. So it's in commercial. So with that Cahoon deal, Cahoon for Sheary and Rodriguez, Cahoon is definitely the best player in that deal. But Sheary and Rodriguez as a package is probably pretty even value.
Talk to your super to see if Impreza is right for you. Recently, an old friend of mine asked me how long Lori and I have been living the dream.
There's a small trade. So Dallas has acquired Buffalo 6th-round pick in exchange for Emily DeJuse, DJUSE.
This is why we're here.
The Kreider extension, I feel like it's a little bit of an overpayment, but good term. He's a good player, and New York found a way to keep him. So, I'm just watching this on TV. I don't know any other ways that you can watch this.
Hi, Enterprise. Can you pick me up? Sure thing, you smell. Where you headed? Anywhere. They keep calling me Mommy Pinata. Enterprise, I need a job.
Absolutely. Which size?
Maple Leafs have recalled defenseman Kevin Gravel. Okay, it's back on.
We'll roll through what's been happening and what may still happen. Here's Tessa Bonan with Frank Saravalli.
Thank you very much, James. Yes, we're going to take a look at a board here. Since 2005, 8 players have been traded on trade deadline day who have gone on to have their names engraved on the Stanley Cup. The list begins with Mark Recchi, who was a major contributor to Carolina's Cup drive in 2006, and it ends with Michael Del Zotto, who played a total of 7 regular season games and none in the playoffs for the Blues. We all know that Del Zotto was fully committed to the St. Louis Blues and their plan because he stayed prepared off ice the entire time in case he was called upon. So how does he qualify to have his name engraved on the cup having not even played a playoff game?
Well, yeah, that's the interesting story, Tessa. We've thought all along that it required 41 games for the same team. Well, it actually turns out that the requirements, according to the NHL and the Hockey Hall of Fame, are just to play 41 games in the season. So Michael Del Zotto played for 3 teams last year. He started the year in Vancouver, 23 games, 12 at Anaheim, and then another 7 regular season games with St. Louis. And ultimately, the St. Louis Blues didn't even have to petition the NHL. His name just goes on the cup. So interesting scenario. Who's going to have the magic touch this year and get their name on the Stanley Cup? Delzato, of course, is available. If you think he's a good omen, he's 43 on our trade bait board.
We heard Carlo, we heard Scotty tell a couple stories about players who thought they were in the clear. Nonetheless, after that 3 o'clock deadline, they find out they in fact had been traded. So what's it like at Central Registry right now as we key in on the deadline?
Well, there's tons of things happening at Central Registry at the moment, but the key is in order to get a transaction in by the 3 p.m. deadline, you must send some sort of electronic communication by 2:59 and 59 seconds, whether it's an email, whether it's a phone call, whether it's a text message or a fax. I don't know how many people are still sending faxes, but that'd be amazing. And if you get that in by 2:59 and 59 seconds, you can then complete your trade call well after 3 p.m., which is what we see happening because a lot of trades at this time of year just end up in the queue, and they could also be hurting that over-under that we set at the beginning of the day. 17, not feeling so good about that at the moment.
I feel like the fax machine is probably the route that no one's taking, so it's probably...
The line will be open. Is
the
that what you're
line's
saying?
not busy. You heard it here. Fax machines on trade deadline day.
All right, thank you, guys. Rivalries, one of the things about the deadline is it can often enhance those historical, geographical, whatever it may be. The Battle of Alberta had already gone to another level this season with some of the antics between the Oilers and the Flames. We'll talk Battle of Alberta and the deadline implications with Gino Reda and his deadline panel.
We're going to touch on that in a second, but right now I've got a different rivalry going, James, and that is the rivalry between Marty Biron and Jeff O'Neill, because when you were talking about the Sabres deals, and Jeff went, I don't know what they're doing. You were offended by that. Explain.
Well, I'm not offended because, you've got great opinions, and I respect what you're saying. But I think what the Sabres are doing is they're trying to get rid of a few free agents that are just going to come off the books at the end of the year, Rodriguez, and obviously Connor Sherry. Add a young player like Cajon that can help them down the middle. That's a position that they lack of. Right now they have Jack Eichel, and after that, that's Marcus Johansson, but he's more of a winger. And they add some grit and experience in Wayne Simmons. Now, it's not the swinging for the fence. They're still in a position where making the playoffs is unlikely, but they are trying to make a push and rewarding the players for what they've done. I think Jason Botterill is finding some value a little bit here that can move forward. It's more of a let's think about the future and let's give it a kick at the can right now.
All right. You okay with that one? Okay.
I don't care.
All right, so what you care about, though, is the Battle of Alberta. And after a big time away from it, it is now back in fine form. We got a couple of guys who know all about that. You're from Fort Mac, and Noodles, you're from St. Albert, which apparently is just outside of Edmonton.
That's a stop.
Was a minute away.
Great city.
How important was it to get this rivalry back?
Yeah, like you said, it's been a good 10 plus years since any sort of talk.
Okay,
about,
get to the fucking trade.
It's been, on the books, and now after the Cassie and Tkachuk thing, which was such a big news. I tweeted something back from
Matt
Switzerland,
Dumba's
they caught
still up there.
wildfire over
Kasperi
but for
Kapanen
the right
hasn't been
reason.
dealt
It was,
yet.
It's two guys going hard at it.
Ben Hutton,
Created a lot of buzz in Alberta.
Luke
The beer
Landon.
stays colder when those games are on like that, and it's great for hockey.
Well, you know what? It's relevant now because for a long time, one team was in, one team was out, and to me now, both of them are chasing that playoff spot in the Pacific, and I liked how it played out. You know what? Both of the guys ended up fighting on their terms. The goaltenders got into it. I mean, outside
Trevor
of this
Lewis,
great story
Pavelec,
that we've seen.
with
the emergency goaltender.
Anthony
This is one of the biggest
D'Angelo.
goaltender situations.
He would probably be big trade.
He's a monster.
Like,
And Cam Talbot to even go up
I
against
wouldn't
him,
see him getting
He
traded
was
because
Yeah,
it's his first season of actually being good.
When you look at Mike Smith, you're thinking, I had some
And
flashback of my fight with
so
my
the
hand when
Rangers
I saw
would
that, I
want
was
a
like,
lot for him, but he hasn't fully proven himself
He did better
yet.
than I did, but still, it was interfering
So
against him. You look at the 80s, from 83
no
to
team
90,
would want to give up that
Calgary or
much for
Edmonton
him.
were in the Stanley Cup Finals. That was
Jeff
fantastic
Petrie would
when
be
you
a
look at
good
it.
trade.
If one team
He
is
would make
good
a good
and the
trade.
other team gets better, it makes both organization better. And yeah, I took about 5 in the noggin right there. I went down I folded like a cheap tent in small wind. I think I heard that before. But yeah, so anyway, it makes both organization better when they can compete and both be on the top echelon. That's really good.
Yeah, there's no doubt. I mean, to see the rivalry games as a
0.4%
fan of the game also. You're looking at those
probability.
games. They played each other 3 times in 2
I would
weeks
be
ago.
interested to
That's
see
it.
what
There, you know who's going to be a battle. But
What
like I said, it's good for hockey and it's good
value
for
of Michael Granlund would be?
both looking to make the playoffs.
It was handled very well.
Yeah, I thought everyone handled it well. I mean, the league was all over it too. I mean, Penrose beating Emlyn building and stuff. The messages were sent with everyone, and I think the players, like the players wanted to do, they wanted to sort it out by themselves.
Speaking of players, Mike Johnson is in Columbus for tonight's game between the Jackets and Sens. The only game in the NHL tonight.
Shit, nobody cares
you
about
were on
that.
both sides of the Toronto-Montreal rivalry, but when you look at where the Battle of Alberta is now, how important is that for the league?
Well, I think it's great. I think it's great for the health of those markets, those teams. But really, the biggest rivalries, as historical as Calgary and Edmonton are made in the playoffs. So if those two teams could then somehow continue what has started this year and the trade deadline acquisitions they've made and carry that on into the playoffs, to think what that could become is what makes you excited as a hockey fan or a hockey fan of one of those two teams. Because I think that's when this could really be taken up to even a higher level than it already has been this year, which is saying something. So I look at it as a great opportunity for maybe a rebirth of what we saw a lot in the 80s and 90s. And the compelling stories to me is they both have star players on them that if they were to beat in the playoffs, it could be a neat opportunity to kind of evaluate where those guys are at with McDavid and Draisaitl, with Monahan and Gaudreau, and kind of what are they doing in the playoffs? What are they doing that matters most? Can they advance? Those kind of questions come up, and they come up even louder when they play against their arch rivals. So it's an exciting time with the distinct possibility that they could meet in the playoffs, which would be a lot of fun.
All right, let's project that now. Let's assume that does indeed fall into place. They're only separated by 3 points in the standings right now. At the start of the year, I think the general consensus was that Calgary had the better team. They could go further in the playoffs. And clearly, it hasn't looked like that right now. Sean Monahan, Johnny Gaudreau maybe a little underperformed. Connor McDavid is now fully back and healthy. Which of these teams can go deeper? Which one of this built for the long run right now?
There's a lot of hockey left right now. And I think both teams realize what's at stake. A berth in the playoffs, any sort of berth in the playoffs with the way these teams are made up, anything can happen. We see the West. There's a lot of room in the West to make moves if you're the 8th seed, and that's you're going to see these teams both.
I agree, Epi, for sure. Like you said, anybody that can get into the playoffs got a chance to win the Stanley Cup, and that's our new NHL. And whatever team gets out at the right time is going to be a big difference, and both of those teams can get out.
You prove what can happen in the playoffs when you get out with a team. There's no doubt about that. All right, James.
All right, thank you, guys. We do not forget that this day is, a lot of these players are emotional wrecks, particularly the ones who've been high on Frank's trade bait list from the beginning. J.G. Pajot wanted to stay in Ottawa. It was right up in the air. Traded to the Islanders, signs a 6-year, $30 million contract. But here's J.G. Pajot on how he was feeling over the last 24 hours.
I had no clue. I was puking last night. It was just something that I've never really been through, so I didn't know what it was like, and it was harder than I would have expected. Just mentally, just to be thinking about so many different things that could have happened to me. It was stressful, and I'm glad it's over now, and I can focus on the goal, which is winning.
I throw up every night before Trade Center at the prospect of there being no deals. But then I remember I'm sitting next to you guys all day and I'm happy.
That's nice, James. Very honest.
$30 million make you feel a little better yourself?
Yeah, he can buy feels better. He can buy some Pepto-Bismol or something for sure.
J.G. Pajot signing a long-term deal with the Islanders, and we are now just 15 minutes away from the deadline.
Oh my God, we need to see some trade.
3 o'clock Eastern.
15 minutes.
On Trade Center on TSN and ESPN.
Do you remember that, sir? Okay. You okay? And no more time going.
Coming in. You can't just show up here and volunteer as doctor.
Why did you come to Canada?
So there really hasn't been too much new news.
CTV's Transplant new series starts Wednesday at 9/10. Visit ctv.ca now for an extended sneak peek.
The 2020 Ranger with blind spot information system, FX4 off-road package, terrain management system, built with all you need to rough it. Right now, get it for $184 every 2 weeks. Get your Ranger today. Harvey's presents the 3
Alright, so feel free to start asking a bunch of questions. Because there's really nothing to do when everyone's waiting for trades during commercial break. So yeah, feel free to ask me whatever you want. Like what I think of any of the trades, the signings. I wish Edmonton played tonight. I really want to see the new look of Edmonton. All their new players.
Where the sun rises at the dawn, and the birds sing their waking song. There's a story to be told. So if you hear a teller telling you a tangled tale, or maybe two, rest assured, every word is true.
Ken Holland has just came in and just been incredible. Like, he didn't do much off the start, but this trade deadline, he's actually doing very well.
We taste over 300 cups of coffee each day, and that's how we ensure that we have Canada's greatest cup of coffee. 300 cups a day.
Okay, so whenever the commercial breaks off, I'll put it back on.
You know what they say about all work, right, Jack? It's why we built the Ranger with available FX4 off-road package and terrain management system. The 2020 Ranger, built for adventure every day. Get this great offer at your local Ford store or Ford.ca.
And left by Morgan Riley, his injury right now.
No news, not great news from what I've seen lately from this club. Obviously, they're just, when you have as talented a group as they do, but you lack consistency, that's very concerning. We're talking about a guy like Patrick Marleau and how he's been missed in that locker room. Yeah, I agree.
Okay, so it's back on.
I'm not sure that.
Manager of the day, TSN Trade Center Award, Kevin Cheveldayoff is your defending champion. He really has some work to do to go back to back. Lou Lamoriello in the running. Already JG Pageau, perhaps Parisi. That's still out there. Here, Dorian's been very busy again. Could have easily won it last year. Was upset by Cheveldayoff. These gentlemen right here, but you cannot see me because I'm on a single shot, will be voted. Thank you, Ben. Ray Ferraro, Dave Poulin, Jeff O'Neill, and Craig Button will have the deciding vote. Is that the way will you have the deciding vote on the GM of the day?
Yes.
Yeah, last year, though, we voted.
Hit the sub button and turn on notifications if you want to see more stuff like this. I might do this for the playoffs, like some playoff games. And I also might do this for like the draft, free agency, anything like this.
I'll be in there. I'll have a vote, and then he'll decide.
That's not what you said.
We are 10 minutes to the deadline here. Do you want to look at some more contenders here? Yeah, let's look at some more cup contenders, including the Pittsburgh Penguins and Washington Capitals. And Pittsburgh Penguins, Gordon was saying it really well. Jimmy Rutherford usually takes care of business way before the deadline, and when he goes out and gets Zucker to play with Sidney Crosby, and that's worked really well. You figure that was it, but they make that deal with Buffalo. Get Rodriguez and Connor Sheary back, and the Penguins haven't been so good the last week or so, but generally really good. 28-2 since December 11th, and look like they may be poised for another. How about that Malkin goal on the weekend against Washington? That was ridiculous. The Washington Capitals, of course, have Ovi. They now have Kovalchuk coming over, and they have Backstrom, and just another cup-worthy contender. Started on a 13-game point streak. Their play has not been great either, though, since about January. They've been kind of a mediocre team since then. We'll see if that big win over the Penguins on the weekend will help propel them. I think that all of you guys both have the Capitals and the Pens in your top 5 Stanley Cup contenders list. I believe so. Do you favor one or the other from what we know?
Sammy Vatanen to the Carolina Hurricanes.
I've got Washington just a little bit ahead.
Okay. Sammy Vatanen.
The more recency of the cup and the hungriness.
It's legit. It's tweeted by Pierre LeBrun.
out of the playoffs.
Verified
It's almost
account.
the best period they get, and they're so hungry coming back. They've had a taste of it once. I think Ovi's going to make another hard run here.
I'll get back to you guys on the subject, but Gord Miller has a trade, I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah, we do. There's a lot of dominoes that have to fall here, and we've been listening for the last couple hours about the possibility of a Brady Shea deal from the New York Rangers to Carolina being held up for cap issues. But now another deal's happened. Bob, what's that one? New Jersey to Carolina. Sorry,
It doesn't matter. We're both Bob and I. Sammy Vatanen, we believe, is headed to the Carolina Hurricanes. He's a player that the Hurricanes have had on their radar for a long time, although they didn't.
The question is, what are they going to get back, though? Yeah, just make sure you hit the subscribe button. You don't even have to turn notifications on, honestly. Like, if you just hit the subscribe button, it just helps out so much.
Injuries to Pesci and Hamilton.
It makes me motivated to make these videos.
Much closer to returning.
It's really fun to make these videos.
He blocked the shot, had a contusion on his
It's
leg.
also nice
And Sammy Vatanen,
that you guys would like to watch these videos.
But not quite there just yet. But,
As you can tell from the view count.
Hurricanes obviously believe that he'll be a player for them before too long, and that can help offset some of the.
What do I think of the Oilers? The Oilers, they have fixed almost all their problems, really. Because their goalies are playing decent this year, right? And then they are getting more and more forward depth as we're speaking. And they got Mike Green last night, technically this morning.
So is that maybe the most obvious fill of the day? That Carolina goes out.
Thanks for the new sub.
Absolutely. And, rental or not, you need to reinforce the blue line there. And Sammy Vatanen is an experienced player. If he's healthy, they'll come in there and really help that team. They have enough of the other type of defensemen. I think Sammy can come in there and move the puck,
1 second.
help the power play like Dougie Hamilton did. And they're looking for that type of a player.
I'm surprised a little bit to this point that, without knowing the health status of Peter Mrazek and James Reimer, but that Carolina's comfortable at this point with their two American League goaltenders, Alex Nedeljkovic and Anton Forsberg.
And I'd say it's still 7 minutes to 3, and I think something's going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, like that would, because Chicago hasn't traded one of their goalies yet. That would be a miss for me by Chicago if they get to the deadline with two unrestricted free agent goalies. That would be a miss. You got to get something back for
I think they think Mrazek's okay and is not going to be out too long, but still, when you're in the heat of a playoff,
but too long is if it's 3 or 5 games. What if we've talked a couple of times about the guy you acquire that scores 2 or 3 big goals for you? Mm-hmm. What if you got a goalie in that won you 2 games,
particularly right away?
Right away until the goalies come back.
What about the New York Rangers? Because this guy, I'd like, I know Corey Crawford's had a good career. I'd be after Leonard. That's the guy I'd be after.
To be for a
for Carolina, for a rental. I mean, he's a free agent, but I think he's a good goaltender. The Ray's point about Chicago, is there an interest? I don't know what the interest would be in Crawford, but I'd be really interested in Leonard.
He could be their guy, not just a rental.
You're exactly right.
Be their goaltender. Sammy Vatanen, does he just fill a hole in Carolina?
Yeah,
or
go
is
for
he
Robin
an
Letty.
upgrade in Carolina, in your opinion?
Well, he's an upgrade from what they have right now. I don't know.
I feel like Chicago has to go into a full rebuild, kind of.
But he's a good pro. I mean, he fills in well. He moves the puck well. He'll step up on the play. I mean, he's a real good pro.
Yeah, that trade was crazy.
Like that.
Have they announced what they're getting back?
There was Shea Theodore and Vatanen,
Montour, Pedersen.
Pedersen's in Pittsburgh, and all of a sudden they're all gone. And now Anaheim's chasing a little bit to backfill around what they've traded away. I think Vatanen will help Carolina. Because he skates and because he moves the puck, that's, of course, what Carolina does.
Yeah.
And I think
he's the guy that the insiders were all saying every team wants, that right-handed shot, puck-moving D-man. Carolina got their guy.
Quickly, Washington, Pittsburgh, because I interrupted you guys.
Prospect and a pick, so that might be like,
teams has an edge if they do end up meeting in the Metro Final.
So
I would say top 4 defenseman, top 9 forward potential, and a second rounder maybe. With how late it is, though, they might have given up more.
All this speed on their third line, that could really negate a Ilya Kovalchuk addition. Because if they're going to race him all over the ice, and that's what Hagelin and Sheary do, that might make it a lot tougher for Kovalchuk to have an impact on Washington. I like Pittsburgh right now at this point in time, and I love Washington. It's like a toss-up.
I will say, sorry. Oh, go ahead.
I like the vibe in Pittsburgh right now. They brought a familiar face back in Sheary. They got the Ray Bork story with Patrick Marleau trying to chase the cup with Sidney Crosby. I just like the vibe going on there. I think they're going
Andreas Athanasiou will wear number 28 with the Edmonton Oilers.
I think we get to redo it and have our post that. And I'll put Pittsburgh and Washington.
Honestly, I would love to see the Leafs make a move. I'm not a Leafs fan, but I would love to see what the Leafs can do.
Since 7 this morning.
Let's throw it back to Gino Reda.
3 minutes, 50 seconds.
All right, my friend.
So keep in mind that they can still make deals after.
Say in the next 4 minutes, what teams
Like, they can still announce deals after. They can't make deals after, but they can announce deals later.
Right now, let's go around the horn. Let's begin with you, Scotty. Who's got to make a deal?
Let's start with the Toronto Maple Leafs. I think they adjust a little bit of the veteran leadership with bringing in Clifford last week. But they still need a guy that's a little more versatile. That's going to.
I feel like there's going to be a bunch of deals announced right now.
Because these games and these points are so huge for them right now.
It's Colorado for me. I love the way they've done stuff the last couple of years. They got a great young hockey team. But I'd love to see them get a guy with some good size and a big physical play.
The Calgary Flames. Listen, you asked earlier who has a better chance to keep going in the playoffs. I think Calgary. I like their goaltending better. So I'm saying if they could add a couple of pieces, and I know we're getting close to the deadline here, but I'd like to see them add something to move forward and to make that push. So Calgary for me.
2 teams, Gino. I know Rome is burning right now in Toronto, but they're actually a pretty good team. How about add a little defensive help there? I know Calle Rosen comes back. They're familiar with him, but there had to have been somebody out there to help that defensive core if Morgan Riley's still a ways away. And Colorado, same situation.
The Leafs, I feel like they should go for Ben Hutton and then another guy like Josh Manson, or even better, possibly.
Colorado could win the cup this year.
Dubas is sleeping.
You don't want to be a question.
True.
All right, let's go back to Gord. Gord, some news before the deadline.
We do have some news before the deadline, and it's big. Darren Dreger.
Yeah, Robin Leonard going to
Vegas.
So just, waiting for
They got Fleury and Leonard now. Holy shit.
I would say that's a significant add for the Vegas Golden Knights.
Goaltender Robin Leonard. Anything else? Is there something else we're tweeting out here?
San Jose and Tampa are talking about a potential Barclay Goodrow trade here right at the buzzer, so we'll see if they can get that done.
That'll be some sandpaper for Tampa. All right, so
and it's a pick and a prospect, but we're still figuring out which pick and which prospect New Jersey's getting for Sammy Vatanen from the Carolina Hurricanes.
All right, there you go, Gino.
All right, Gord, let me just reenact something for you. As soon as you announced what the deal was, the 3 faces on that side of the table all went. Translate for me. What does that mean? Explain that.
I mean, I saw Leonard in Buffalo, and I know what he's done the last couple of years. So he's going to Vegas to be the backup to Marc-Andre Fleury, right? So it's insurance. I think he's had 2 fantastic years, and he should be rewarded with a #1 job next year and a contract. And he pointed that out. So, I mean, Coach,
you got some insights on that too.
Yeah, no. it's cutting me by surprise a little bit. To be honest with you, I didn't think Leonard's a real good goalie. He's going to be he's going to be the backup for Fleury. But Mark,
holy crap, boys!
He's a big leader, and so this guy's coming in. So it caught me a bit by surprise.
Flowers, the one, hands down. To me, this is an indictment on.
Okay, Robin Leonard to Vegas. We got to get something back for
right near the deadline. They can get him for maybe pennies on the dollar.
Speaking of the deadline, we're rapidly approaching that deadline, James. So let me send it back to you.
All right, thank you. Yes, Gino, we are indeed 30 seconds from the deadline.
30 seconds.
There may be deals that come in for the next hour or so, depending on how backed up they are right now at the National Hockey League. I know, as you guys were saying, Jamie said Flowers, the definitive #1. I'm not sure if Craig Button is so sure that we might not see a lot of Robin Leonard. Marc-Andre Fleury has not had his best season.
I think Robin Leonard comes in there to what Ray and I need to push. He's there to push.
I mean, Gerard would know better than any of us, but it was Marc-Andre Fleury or you're not putting another guy in that.
Here we go. We decided instead of the horn this year, we'd use the penalty music from the World Championships to bother great first.
They've been using that.
So that's the greatest inside joke ever. Should we have a horn? Should we at least make the horn so it sounds official somewhere? There you go.
There it is. Too late. You can't save it.
Kids were mocking the song. We are here at 3 o'clock Eastern Time. The trade deadline is past. General managers, put down your phones. You are out of time. It's been a busy day for Trade Center so far. I can't do the math right in front of me, but somewhere around 15 trades so far.
No Tyson Berry trade. No Leafs trade at all yet.
20 more that happen that come down in the next hour, so no guarantee of that. But names we'll be watching over the next few minutes. Joe Thornton. Doesn't look like it, but is there a possibility at the last second that he waived? We'll wait and see on that. Tyson Berry. Bob was tweeting just a few minutes ago, things could change, but right now at that point it didn't look like Toronto. Done. Hasn't happened. Tyson Berry has not been traded by the Toronto Maple Leafs, so there we can confirm that. Can we say the Leafs have done nothing? Then is that?
You can't say that.
Okay. And Zach Parise, of course, there's talk of that deal happening. Zach Parise going from Minnesota.
Columbus acquires Devin Shore from Anaheim, confirmed.
And being reunited with Lou Lamoriello. Does that happen? Did that get done before the deadline? These are the questions we'll have answered over the next 20 minutes or so. Barry is not traded. So I know Leaf fans will be sitting here going, not necessarily an indictment of Tyson Berry, but they wanted something to happen. They wanted blood after that game on Saturday night. Is it the right move to sit there and be patient and say, okay, guys, it's up to you to turn this thing around. This is the group.
Well,
okay, so keep in mind there might be a few more coming in. Make sure you hit the sub button before you leave the stream. Just for playoff games, like if you want to see playoff games on here, if you want to see next year's trade deadline, if you want to see the draft, if you want to see free agency, anything like that, just feel free to hit the sub button, and then you can just check back whenever the draft's on, whatever's on. Yes, Leonard did get traded. He's going to Vegas. We do not know what the return is yet.
Here's the group. You guys go ahead and figure it out. Could they have used some kind of veteran presence in that locker room to kind of spark them a little bit after the last week they've had? Sure, but
Leonard to Vegas.
Barber said on the Insight panel, you don't fix structural problems on the day of the trade deadline. Right. And you know, when a road gets a big pothole, you know, you put pylons around it, right? And you drive around it and everything, right? You got to come in and fix the road and get and reinforced and then resurface it. That's where the Leafs are at.
This has been construction metaphors with Craig You're on Trade Center. No, you're right. And isn't the smart way, again, not knowing.
I really want just a bunch more trades just to come through all at once.
Give them this one more run to see what happens, and then if you're going to blow it up, I use that without capitals. You would do that in the summer.
Well, yeah, because how would you do it now?
It's almost impossible.
It's impossible with too much to try and make the money work. You know, these guys spent the better part of the last couple hours trying to figure out.
Buffalo only has a 4% probability of making playoffs now. They're not that far out. They're only like 6 points out or something.
I think it's a major message to the players in that locker room. Which team are you? Are you Thursday night? We'll watch that video, and then we'll sit down and watch Saturday night. Are you that video? Same guys, same uniform.
Thursday night, or are you Saturday night, or the previous Tuesday and the previous Saturday? That's the problem right now.
Your two most recent games are arguably your best of the year and maybe your worst of the year.
Okay,
so I'll go further back than that.
Okay, well, let me give you another choice then. This is I was a 2-time 40-goal scorer, but I wasn't a 40-goal scorer. So what would make a team think I was a 40-goal scorer? What would make you think Thursday's game from Toronto is the one they're going to play all the time?
But I'd ask each individual that question.
Can we do that?
Can you do that?
Well, that's all you do now.
That game.
You can't do anything else.
But that's what the message has got to be. They made no moves.
Is there any other team that didn't make a move?
You know, we've talked about loving to leave this group together. Maybe
Thornton is confirmed not traded. He's staying in San Jose. It would have been nice to see him go to Boston, though.
I think the players know first and foremost.
Bring it back to where it all started.
High level or they're not. So don't tell me any of you guys didn't.
St. Louis didn't trade.
To be a contender.
They don't really need to trade, though. They have a solid team, solid all-around team.
Sit there and say, that's our game Thursday. They got no chance to compete against Boston or Tampa Bay or those teams. And I think the players know exactly that.
Well, I think it would be pretty fair. I'd say the teams I played on, you'd know if you had if you kind of had
You
it.
would think they would have an understanding that the game on Thursday, if they presented that every night, they at least have a fighting chance.
Yeah, somewhere in between, maybe.
But if they don't
Oh, Toronto did make one move, but it was a minor
on
move.
Thursday, then they don't even have a chance.
Are you saying, Craig, they don't have it? You just don't think this group can do it?
No, I don't. I do not believe in this group as a contender. I'm talking about as a middle of the road team that can show you flashes of good. I don't think their Saturday or last Tuesday is representative of what they are, but I don't think Thursday is representative of what they are. But when I look at this team, and this team is, they talk about them as Stanley Cup contenders. They're not even close. I don't see even any remnants of a team.
Yeah, the Leafs really didn't do anything.
Really good individual. I think they're a terrific individual player. But it's a team.
Why don't we run through the Canadian teams?
Okay,
again,
Chicago's getting a second
asterisk
and a prospect.
This. The fact that we
Maybe
don't know
more
if there's
for
other
Robin
deals that
Leonard.
we may find out about in the next half an hour.
Yeah,
So I'm
Joe
not going to
Thornton is
act like these teams are
confirmed
done,
staying
but
in
from
San
what we
Jose.
know so far. So we've just talked about Toronto. The Montreal Canadiens do a couple of things on this day. Did you expect more, or is that pretty much what you expected?
Not the program I talked about, but that was a summer program about how you potentially go out and get a superstar this summer. You know, with the assets you've developed, and they've got a lot of nice players in the middle. They've got a good group coming, but that doesn't get done at the trade deadline.
The one thing Marc Bergevin deserves credit for, he gets Scandella for a 4th round pick, flips him within 6 weeks for a 2nd round pick. So there's 2 for nothing.
And a 4th.
Yeah, and then you deal Kovalchuk, who nobody else wanted. You sign him, you turn him into an asset, get a third for him, and then you may well re-sign him in the summer because you've done goodwill. That was something else I don't think we reported earlier on the day. Ilya Kovalchuk saying that Marc Bergevin told him there were better offers, but he sent him to Washington because Kovalchuk wanted to go to Washington and play with his best buddy Ovi and have a chance to win the Stanley Cup. That's got to buy you something as far as maybe him re-signing on July 1st. So good work there. The Ottawa Senators, again, another very busy day. We thank Pierre Dorian for the 3rd straight deadline. He provided us with a lot of material. Senators fans weren't so happy a couple of years ago and last year with Mark Stone. And they're not happy about losing Pajot, I don't think, either. But, again, the haul, you always gauge how the other general managers in the league are reacting. And Gordon, the guy, said it. Like, there was a lot of wide eyes at what they got back for Pajot. Now, it makes a lot more sense that he signed long-term now, but this second, conditional 3rd.
Sorry, James, this feels different for Ottawa this year. Like,
well, they had their first.
No, but not only that, it felt like in the past they were still descending into this hole, and now it just, from the assets they've acquired, the way that the guys have played for DJ Smith, who I think has done a fantastic job in Ottawa, there just seems like there's air. Like,
he was the best subtractor today. Of those that subtracted from their lineup, he did the best job of subtract.
Well, you look, if they can throw in Lafreniere and they have an opportunity to turn a couple of those picks into a good young hot like player, position player, they have an opportunity with all the picks they have coming up to totally reshape that franchise. And nobody needs it more than the same.
It's still a crapshoot when you add the San Jose odds in the draft lottery. Ottawa has San Jose's first pick, Ottawa's odds. They have the best chance, but it's still kind of a 1 in 5. But as Craig knows the draft more than anyone else, they're going to get some good players somewhere with those 2 picks in the top, whatever it is, 6 or 7. Here are your lottery odds right now. Detroit has number 1, 18.5%. So you add together Ottawa's 11.5 for their own pick, 8.5 for San Jose's pick, and that is exactly 20%, a 1 in 5 shot. And remember, they got the Islanders first rounder today. Now, the Islanders don't make the playoffs. That will be a lottery pick as well. It is top 3 protected. So if the Islanders happen to miss the playoffs and win the lottery, Ottawa will not get that pick, but it could be a 4 or a 5 or a 6. And it's been a long time since we've had one team that had a chance at maybe 3 top 10 picks.
So,
the Islanders could make the playoffs.
Barclay Goodrow got traded to Tampa Bay.
The Edmonton Oilers, the biggest mover and shaker as far as the volume of deals done on this day. And Kenny Holland goes to his old team and gets Mike Green and gets Athanasiou.
I feel that's
goes
about
to
it.
Ottawa and gets Tyler Ennis. Are they a substantially better team, a mildly better team than they were?
Oh, substantially. I think that they had Alex Chason and Sam Gagner playing with Connor McDavid the last game before the trade deadline, and McDavid still had a goal to assist. Maybe it doesn't matter, but they got faster.
Breaking news: Marchand traded.
We'll see where Athanasiou fits in. Mike Green gives him a veteran hand on the blue line that can still move the puck. He can play on their power play. They're still a couple of weeks away from Oscar Klefbom too. Kenny Holland really quietly mentioned that there wasn't much going to happen this deadline, and then goes and gets 3 players. I think he had a really good day in Edmonton.
I think Athanasiou can be an X factor where if he goes there and figures it out and has an opportunity with either Draisaitl or McDavid.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be with McDavid. That's the key. It's
Just if he, I know we've talked about the minuses and his ability to think the game on the ice, but if he can go there and put it together, all we've talked about for years is how they need speed on the wings at Edmonton. They've definitely got that today. And I think if Athanasiou can put it together, he can be that difference maker with a man. What a move by Edmonton to get him.
Well, you talk about Kenny. I mean, Kenny has tons of experience about understanding where his team is at and then trying to give them a boost.
I feel like that was
the lineup. And I think
not the
that
best trade deadline day it could have been, but it was a decent trade deadline day.
job of saying this team can benefit from some help, and now they can push along.
Kept all of his young defense prospects that they like a lot. Bouchard, Samorukov, and Broberg. Kept his first this year for a team that's capped right out. He bought some space here for himself.
The team right behind them in the Pacific Division are the Vancouver Canucks, whose big move so far. Again, there's still maybe more before.
Is that real?
Tyler Toffoli. We'll give discussion. We won't forget the Calgary. We won't forget
Carolina acquires Brady Shea from the New York Rangers.
We've been waiting on it for a couple hours. Carolina, Brady Shea does go from the Rangers to Carolina.
Yeah, and they were trying to navigate their cap issues, and I think they ended up getting around it with some LTIR action. We know they have injured defensemen. So it's Brady Shea for a first-round pick. Now, we know they have 2 first-round picks, so it'll be interesting to find out. My guess is
that was a terrible
choice to be had there between the Rangers and Carolina on which one. Right. But it's a first.
Okay, big trade.
For Brady Shea,
big new trade.
As well. So Carolina picks up
for a first. I assume there's a little bit
Brady
more.
Shea and Sammy Vatanen for their injured blue line.
All right, we've been sitting on and discussing the potential of this Minnesota deal with the New York Islanders, Zach Parise for Andrew Ladd, and it looks as though that didn't happen. Lou Lamoriello was scheduled a conference call here in about 3 minutes.
Shit.
Which would indicate that if a deal had been done, he would not be having a conference call now. He wouldn't be talking to reporters now.
That seems likely that he wouldn't be talking to reporters now. And then, look, as we were careful throughout this process, I mean, both players, in this case, veteran forwards, and Zach Parise of the Minnesota Wild and Andrew Ladd of the New York Islanders, had waived their no trade coverage to accept the deal. But, again, as we speculated when it was first reported, it's a mammoth deal in terms of the financial considerations and, complex in the sense of who's taking this, who's retaining that. So clearly the Minnesota Wild and the New York Islanders weren't able to bridge that financial gap. Again, according to the number of sources who have reached out in the last 20 minutes or so to say that they believe that it's come off the rails.
All right, we'll get the official word on that and some more trades that come trickling across the line, James.
That's interesting because the trend in trades that are much to my chagrin, it would be to get deals, especially complicated deals and significant deals done in the period before the deadline. It's interesting that with all that tricky math with the dollars involved with Parise and Ladd, that it went so long. Not saying that the deadline is what stopped it, but it is a little strange.
Yeah, it is. And even with the Carolina deal, we were wondering about how Brady Shea fit in. Well, they were working on something else at the same time. That's why it didn't fit in. Because they had enough for Shea, but they didn't have enough for Shea and Vatanen without doing, the manipulations with the LTIR and putting somebody on long-term injury.
Well, and Rod Brindamore, after the game Saturday night, said Pesce was going to be long-term.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Carolina added some good players.
Yeah, I was going to say a Carolina sleeper on this day of getting exactly what they needed to get done.
I don't want to ruin the surprise, but one of us might pick them as the winners of the day.
I would say Carolina and Edmonton are 2 winners of the day.
You know what? Everybody, like David Ayer's getting the tribute video, right?
Yes, he is.
Doesn't everybody get one in Carolina?
The greatest thing.
Everybody.
Dylan Cavello got a tribute video.
I mean, in Carolina, I think they give them all the guys there.
Yeah,
I think I texted. I texted when Dylan DeMello was getting his tribute video. He just replied, "What?" with a 3 question marks.
how much you've done for the community in a year and a half, all that stuff.
Dave Ayers played a half a game, and he's getting a tribute video. I hate the Dave Ayers.
Maybe the machine wasn't working when I went back. That's the only thing I could think of.
Let's quickly run through the other Canadian teams where we were talking before. We had just gotten to the Vancouver Canucks, who got Tyler Toffoli, and I guess that was their most significant move. Again, there may still be deals, but what we know.
But also, they did a lot of their work.
I hope the Canucks get something. I would love to see the Canucks do good.
Which worked out great.
Worked out great. They traded a second for Toffoli. They don't have a first and a second round pick this year. They also traded a prospect in Tyler Madden in the Toffoli deal.
They brought in Tyler Myers.
So you've only got so much to do. I think their stuff's already done. And I said earlier, I think they're Canada's best team.
Yeah, I agree with you.
And I think their work was done prior to.
Yeah, all day I kept saying, is Vancouver going to do something? But they got Tyler Toffoli. He's a good player, and he's going to fill in for Besser being injured. That's a good ad, and they got to get the job done. I thought they would make more of a push just to say to their group, we believe you can get in this year. But they
I thought they'd hunt one more defenseman.
Yeah, right.
Just to help their depth back there. They're a little thing.
The Calgary Flames, who we called one of the biggest wild cards heading into this day, and from what we know right now, to get Derek Forbort from LA for a 4th round pick, and that's it at this point.
Is not Eric Gustafson that deal?
Did the Gustafson deal get done, guys? Not that we know of. Yes, it does get a little muddle in your head. Sometimes there are things that are in the works and don't actually get done. So right now, that is the only deal for Calgary. Are they good enough?
I like the addition of Forbort just because it gives him a different look on the blue line. He's big. He's a defender.
Mm-hmm.
He's going to play probably in the bottom pair, but it just gives him a different look.
Oh, Jake Muzzin signed an extension.
You know, push people out of space.
4 years, 5.625.
I think that gives him a real weapon on the power play, a bomb from the point that can open up some different opportunities for the
$5,625,000.
And the inconsistencies. And
4-year deal.
Sending a message to that locker.
That's the average annual value.
Not a deal that had your best years.
Just above
I think if
5.6.
that's it for Calgary, in my mind, it was not for lack of trying. They had cleared money well in advance, and maybe something just didn't come together.
Drake's reported this last week, so it's not a surprise, but Jake Muzzin, that deal with the Leafs is official, a 4-year extension, $5.625 million per year. And finally, the Winnipeg Jets, Kevin Cheveldayoff joined us this morning. Didn't expect, I think, too much to happen on this day. The Jets have done unbelievably well considering all of their injuries. Are they a playoff team or one of those ones that just misses out?
I think they just miss out. I'd love to see them make it because I think you were just talking about putting it on the group. I think that's why Kevin. I'm getting Dylan DeMello. I'm getting Koik, and I'm trying to do everything I can to help you guys because they deserve it. Like you want to help that team. I'm so impressed with them, but I think they're going to run out of runway.
Their additions are going to be Adam Lowry and Matthew Pearl. Yeah. 2 guys that are injured. Those are going to be their trade deadline additions.
We're going to take a break here. We still have 12 more minutes for the folks on ESPN2, and we'll continue along here on TSN for the next 3.5 hours here on Trade Center 2020.
Hey, nigga, second happen?
RSP. Remember that paint choice from 1978?
So Berkeley Goudreau to the Flames is confirmed, or to the Lightning is confirmed.
Hurry into Home Hardware's paint and renovation sale where our Beauty Tone color experts can help you. Save 30% on our Beauty Tone signature paint. Save 30% on Gorilla Glue and adhesives. And save 25% on Filtrete furnace filters.
Not much that they haven't covered has happened. So the Vatanen deal is it's Sammy Vatanen for Jane Kukalin and a second, something like that, whatever that guy's name is. Biggest winner from today, I'm going to say, is Carolina.
Using head and shoulders every day, it's like great optics for my hair. No. It's defense, it's place. Offense, defense, offense, defense, offense, defense, defense, offense for great hair. Defense against flakes.
Hey Google,
What time do the Raptors play?
Set the lights to game time.
Show me a 15-minute master recipe.
Oilers are done for the day. They have nothing else coming.
With TurboTax Live, you have a real-life tax expert to help you maximize your refund. Intuit TurboTax, your tax expert.
Who called me twice?
Well, they're not fresh.
What are they?
The chips.
Um,
They're round. Right on.
No matter what you call them, they're the perfect scent.
See? It says chips. Right on that.
Milwaukee and Toronto. That is a heavyweight slugfest.
Brady Shea, I think, is only going to get a first-round pick back. All right, it's back on. Let's go.
Everything in between. NCAA March Madness returns Thursday, March 19th. James Duffy back on Trade Center, and we'll get
Luis Domingue to Vancouver.
The dominoes falling on the goaltending side. Bob McKenzie, you got
$16.8 million in signing bonuses to Jake Muzzin. That's quite a lot.
We're checking to see if there might be a situation with Jacob Markstrom where he might be dinged up a little bit. I do not know that. I want to check and see.
all right. And busily typing away is Pierre LeBrun.
Yes, sorry. Just back to the San Jose Tampa deal that is not official yet. It's still awaiting the trade call, but we're told that out of this, which has a few items, San Jose Sharks will get a first-round pick with Bujo going to Tampa Bay. And again, there's another element, I think, but that's what we're hearing so far.
All right, and Darren, you talk.
Bonus money for Jake.
Right,
So that means, for those of you who don't follow along, you can't buy that money out.
No.
So that means that
Lockout protected by unprotected.
right. So no matter what happens, you get to pay that money on July the 1st. So that's an intriguing move by Toronto. Maybe the only move they made today, pending final notification that nothing else happened. James.
All right, thank you. The other note, Markstrom did take that stick to the eye from Dan Heinen. Now, he did return to the game, so I'm not sure if it's that, but perhaps as they get Louis Domingue as some insurance in Vancouver on the goaltending front. Let's get to our trade bait, boys. Oh, no. Sorry, where are we going to, guys, exactly? Oh, I'm doing the trade bait board. Producer Jeff says, we're doing trade bait. I'm like, who's doing trade bait? You're doing trade bait, James. So here we go. Chris Kreider is off the list because he stays with the New York Rangers. Jean-Gabriel Pageau goes to the New York Islanders and signs a $30 million extension. Carolina's first-round pick, that did move, I believe. Carolina's first-round pick moved in one of those deals at the end, didn't it?
No, we don't, but eight first-round pick. We don't know if it's Toronto's first.
But it's one of Carolina's first-round pick, and I think that's what we meant on this list. Frank put him on the list. A Carolina first-round pick has moved, so we can put that in red. Sammy Vatanen has also moved to Carolina. So the first four things on our trade bait list all moved on this day. But Tyson Barrie stays in Toronto. We know that deal is not coming around. Number 6, Vladislav Nemestikov goes from the Ottawa Senators to Colorado, so we check him off in red. Andreas Athanasiou goes to the Edmonton Oilers. Eric Gustafsson, from what we know right now, is still a Chicago Blackhawk. There was talk earlier in the day that maybe he was going to
I thought it was confirmed. I swear, someone on Twitter said it was confirmed.
Blackhawk Derek Grant goes to the Philadelphia Flyers from Anaheim, and Dustin Byfuglien at number 10 looks like he is still available to whoever wants him. Let's check in with Gino Renda one more time in the deadline panel.
All right, James, quick thought on Louis Domingue going to the Vancouver Canucks.
Just the third goaltender. He's cleared waivers. He can play in the minors, and just bridging. Markstrom did get popped the other night, but I think he's fine. So it's just, to me, it's depth of the organization.
Yeah, and I mean, you see Robin Leonard going to Vegas. I don't think that the Vancouver Canucks were in the market for a guy like Robin Leonard. They've got Markstrom and Tasha Demko, so where would you fit Leonard in there? Louis Domingue comes in, could be an insurance policy. If something happens, then you don't have to. We keep referencing the emergency backup goalie, so you don't want to go that route in the playoffs. So you have Louis Domingue there as a third goalie.
All right, so let's get to the topic that we want to discuss right now, and that is guys who are staying put. Guys like Tyson Barrie, Joe Thornton, Zach Parise, Chris Kreider, who ended up getting the deal because we thought those negotiations were back and forth. Reflect on for me, guys who you are surprised, thought that should have been moved, that didn't get moved, or guys you're glad that didn't get moved because they absolutely should stay where they stay.
I'm going to start off with a friend of mine, Tyson Barrie, here at the Toronto Maple Leafs. Tyson's he's a small cap hit, a chance to go to a new team, a new experience, something personally I've experienced where you go to a new situation and, the world's your oyster. You can have numerous chances at being a different player. And Toronto keeping him, I think that does a lot for their group. They still have potential to get in the playoffs and do big things, and he's going to be a big part of that.
I agree. I think that, if you weren't going to trade him for an upgrade in that position, what do you need?
All right, so next commercial break, I'll do a full recap of today's events.
Riley is a big part of that scenario. He's still coming back. You need a guy like Tyson Barrie to play to his potential. And I think there's a lot more there. So I think they're just saying, let's relax here, allow this guy to continue to play instead of
All right, so I'm kind of confused here, but it looks like Brooklyn Goudreau is going to get a first-round pick back somehow.
Joe Thornton or not, there's a guy that you say should have an opportunity to win a Stanley Cup. Are you disappointed that he's staying?
I'm disappointed. I'm going to play the sentimental card here. I thought Joe Thornton to Boston would have been a great story. Joe Thornton, pretty much anywhere. To get that chance at a championship.
The San Jose Sharks got a first-round pick out of Berkeley Goudreau.
But I don't think that's really in the cards. So I wanted to see Big Joe. Listen, I played with him in the World Juniors. I was a 19-year-old. He was a 17-year-old. I was a backup. He was the extra forward. We sat next to each other on the bench, right? And I think he has that drive to win. And he wanted to win in San Jose. It just didn't happen. I wish he would have had the chance to go and compete for Stanley Cup this year.
Turk, what do you think of both Rangers hanging on to Kreider?
I think it's a great move by them. I think Chris Kreider is a New York Ranger. He's been there his whole career, and I think that's a good go. He signed a long-term contract with them now, so I think it's a huge move for the Rangers, and I think Chris Kreider could be real happy with them staying there.
I think the Rangers are closer than people want to give them credit to. They got Shesterkin, they got great pieces. I know they traded Brady Shea, but they got a first-round pick in return, and Kreider staying, it's a statement. The Rangers are saying that. They sent a letter 2 years ago saying we're going to trade the players. McDonough went. Now they're saying, without sending a letter, we're making a push to get better really soon.
Yeah, guys push through D'Angelo, guys like that. Like, to me, I think the Rangers are making a statement by keeping him. And he's a fantastic player, really tough to play against.
All right, James, guys who stayed put, who didn't help us with the show, but good arguments for why they are where they are.
Hey, we're still able to talk about them for some of our 10 hours. I appreciate it, Gino. I want to thank all of our folks on ESPN2 for joining us for the last 90 minutes. This day is a little bit of mayhem in Canada, but heck, we always enjoy it. Thank you for enjoying part of it with us. We'll continue along here on TSN until 6 p.m. Eastern Time, and then a special edition of SportsCenter, the trade deadline.
Okay.
I'll watch the GM press conferences so we can take a food break. We'll be back after this.
So I'm going to do a little recap here. So, first thing that happened, at about 12:38 last night, Mike Green got traded for Kyle Brodziak in conditional fourth. I do not know the condition. And then this morning, I think it was around 9 o'clock, the first trade, like the first actual trade, while Sportsnet was covering and TSN was covering, Vladislav Nemesnikov for a 4th, and then the next one was John Gabriel Pajot for a conditional 1st, a 2nd, and a conditional 3rd in 2022. And then this trade completely came out of nowhere. Vincent Trocheck to Carolina for Eric Hollow, Lucas Walmart, and 2 prospects. And then Nate Thompson for a 5th. Patrick Marleau for a 3rd, going to Pittsburgh. Nate Thompson went to Philadelphia. Callie Rosen goes back to Toronto in exchange for Michael Hutchinson. Derek Grant in exchange for a 4th-round pick and Kyle Coolio or something like that. Then Wayne Simmons for a conditional 5th-round pick. The 5th will turn to a 4th if Buffalo makes the playoffs and Simmons plays 10 games, which is very unlikely that they will make the playoffs. But they could. And then Nick Ritchie to Boston for Danton Heinen. And then Matthew Pekka to Ottawa. And back to Montreal is Aaron Luchuk and a 7th. And then this was one of the bigger trades of the day. Andreas Athanasiou and Ryan Kumpfner in exchange for Sam Gagner, a 2nd in 2020 and a 2nd in 2021. And then Tyler Ennis to Edmonton in exchange for a 2021 for 5th. Almost said 1st. And then Derek Forbert to Calgary for a 4th. Connor Sheary and Evan Rodriguez in exchange for Dominic Cahoon. I really like that addition to Buffalo. I also like it on Pittsburgh. I feel that was a pretty even trade. And then Emile Dejus, maybe. I don't know how you say that. In exchange for Buffalo's 2026th. He goes to Florida from Dallas. And then the Sammy Vatanen trade, this is where things really started picking up for Jane Kukkonen and a 2nd. And then Robin Leonard goes to Vegas, still to be determined, but it's a 2nd-round pick and a prospect, I'm pretty sure. And then Devin Shore to Columbus in exchange for Sonny Milano. And then Brady Shea to Carolina for a 1st-round pick. And then Louis Domingue to Vancouver in exchange for Zane McIntyre. And then Barclay Goodrow for a 1st-round pick. I don't know how. And then free agents, like extensions, I guess. Racco Grimaldi got 2 years, $4 million. Chris Kreider got 7 years, $45.5 million. Jean Gabriel Pajot got 6 years, $30 million. And Jake Muzzin got 4 years, $22.5 million. Okay, so doing a press conference right now.
Potentially today, close on anything?
We had some conversations with some teams. Generally they're more around the potential of a hockey trade of some sort involving, player for player, different, situations like that. So we've done some due diligence. Close on anything? I don't know. I wouldn't say that there was anything close or not, but maybe some conversations that could pick up at a different point in time.
Right. So on that, sometimes the groundwork gets laid for a future move down the road. Obviously, you spent the 2 draft picks last week for Cody Kinnan.
and Dylan DeMello. Was it a matter of not wanting to necessarily tap in anymore to draft picks to make a move?
I guess that's part of it. There wasn't a lot of things that really happened that you kind of came out of left field, so you kind of knew where things were at. For the most part, you had an understanding of what the prices may or may not be for some different players. Again, you want to just you don't want to make a trade just for the sake of making a trade. If you're going to bring someone in, you got to make sure that one, they're going to get played and they're going to fit, and so as opposed to tapping into other assets, sometimes it's just best that you go with what you have.
We often hear this time of year teams get put into one of two categories, buyers or sellers, and obviously it's not always that simple. When you're in the position that you guys are today, now 1 point out of that final spot, 18 games left, can you be a buyer and a seller in a market like that?
Well, I suppose you could if you wanted to be, but we were pretty much decisively buyers when it came to the thought process moving forward here. You are a little bit hamstrung when you've have the injuries that we do with respect to potentially maybe doing some hockey deals. You've got a couple of players that could be a week to 2 weeks away. So those you look to get into your lineup obviously sooner rather than later. That's the acquisitions that you're hoping for in some respects.
I also forgot about the waiver claims. Those were just at the bottom of the screen. If you want to go back a little bit.
Maybe picking up a late pick.
Those two moves you made, which we talked about, you said there's a reward working players for where they are at in some ways. How do you feel about the way they respond?
Well, certainly we looked at these deals even more than just reward. Again, I think both of these deals that we did make could have some potential long-term implications as well. So it's not, just a simple, rental for the sake of a rental type of.
Okay, I don't think anyone gives a shit about this.
On the road, intimately watching, the group. But again, it's for us, I'm real proud of this group, the fight that they've put up and the fight that they stayed in. I know that they're gearing up for Washington. It's not going to be an easy battle, whether we're 1 point out of it here today or whether we're 2 points up on it today. We've got some head-to-head games that are coming up against teams that we are fighting for, but all we're looking at and all we're going to focus on is the here and now, and that's what's really important. We'll deal with the different injury situations that we have as they all unfold as well.
How about the last two losses then, if at all, affect the way you went into today?
It really didn't, I don't think. From that standpoint, we identified some areas that we wanted to.
I know I said I wanted Robin Leonard to get traded, but now I feel like I'm going to kind of miss him because really he was one of the only, goalies don't usually work out that much when you get them out of free agency. He really worked for us, other than in the shootout.
Did we have that type of currency, to put into play into the marketplace? That's a different story. But as far as changing my thought process or changing the direction, we went into this understanding that there's no quick fixes, there's no immediate cure here. We've got to continue to fight, and we believe the players we added, will help us in that fight.
Given those injuries you talked about, and given where the team is in the standings, not for sure in, not sure out, how did that sort of make this whole dynamic of this trade that
Yeah, it was different. We talked about that, as well. Obviously, the last two, we took big swings. We obviously, had the appetite to go after something that we thought was, going to fit. Again, you have to find the thing that fits, and you have to have the currency, and you have to have the appetite. All those three things have to align. And for 2 years in a row, we felt that. This year, the appetite was to try and do the two moves that we did. And going into today, knowing that again, we made those moves and understanding what the other fits might be, we were comfortable. If nothing else came to fruition, we were comfortable with where we're at.
Can you say whether Josh Morrissey is able to be
So it was an off day today. So they just did medical treatments. They didn't do any on ice stuff or anything like that. So I guess, Paul usually gives the updates, but I would, classify Josh as a day-to-day right now, given what I know and given, me being here and them being there.
Kevin, was anybody sent down to the Moose that are eligible for the
So we did make Shaw available, to the Moose, but he'll get obviously recalled right back to the Jets here today.
Trade deadline being passed now. Is there any, when it comes to the Dustin Byfuglien situation, do you expect that to be rectified then shortly, or is there no rush to get it done?
There's obviously some different things behind the scenes. There's still, a work in progress there. Interestingly enough, Dustin essentially, made the decision not to play this year, and that essentially, kind of squashed anything that might happen for, someone to maybe put them in their lineup this year. We can still trade him at any point in time, with respect to, the future as well. So it's still a work in progress.
Just on that, Kevin, have you been able to get any clarity? I think when we talked around Christmas time there in Denver, the idea of not playing for a full season and a player being suspended for that full season, does that count towards one of those 2 years remaining on his deal, or does somehow that slide and he'd still have 2 years left?
Yeah, I think that would be our choice if we wanted to go down that path. If we wanted to push a tolling type of situation, that's what they call it, that would be our choice.
Okay. So it would be 1 year remaining on his deal?
Again, I don't want to get into specifics because, again, nothing has been, determined, one way or another.
The idea of the people were always talking about the cap space. Regardless of the Byfuglien situation, were you in any way hindered by what you tried to do at this trade deadline, or things you might have wanted to do by cap space in any way?
No, not since Dustin made the decision that he was definitely not coming back this year.
Just on the idea, obviously, of what's coming maybe this summer. You've had very different summers here lately. Last year, obviously, a number of your own players re-signed. It's not nearly as big of a pool this year with RFAs as we've seen in years past, and there may be all kinds of cap space available. Would it be safe to say that this summer could take on a real different tone, just like this trade deadline was a lot different than the last couple of years? Could also be a lot different.
I'm going to end the stream here. Hope you enjoyed. Don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe.
Yeah,
I hope to see you guys back here maybe for another stream like this. I've never done this before. It was pretty good. It was fun to do. And it looks like most of you guys enjoyed it. So I'll try to do these more often. And see ya.
Different options. But again, until, obviously we still have to deal with